Valerie holds a piece of cake in her hand as she lights the match, making a wish for her own happiness on her birthday. She reflects on the struggles she faced in this frozen castle throughout her life, but now, on this special day, she has finally turned a new leaf. However, she can't help but think that the people outside still wish for her demise. She remembers how her half-brother, the Emperor, sentenced her to exile in the MacLeod castle. The people were dissatisfied, thinking it was too lenient of a punishment, and believed she deserved execution, just like her mother. Her mother had been accused of attempting to poison the Empress, resulting in the death of the expected Imperial Grand Prince. The people wanted a harsher punishment for Valerie, and they pleaded with the Emperor to reconsider his decision. But he silenced them, willing to listen only to those who were willing to accompany Valerie to MacLeod. Valerie contemplates that being confined in a frozen castle is no different from a death sentence. Her stepbrother chose this as the best option to spare her life, even though she had done nothing wrong. The MacLeod Castle, located on the peak of a snow mountain, was once a place of lush greenery until it froze over years ago when Emperor Lockhart defeated a freezing monster. The force unleashed by the strike froze the entire mountain in an instant, resulting in frozen villages and countless casualties. Even after all these years, the forest remains unchanged, still carrying the haunting memories of that incident. Valerie questions whether being exiled to such a place was punishment enough, especially considering that she also acquired the freezing ability of that monster. She can't help but feel that her life is incredibly unfortunate, and wonders if a loving God would allow such circumstances. She ponders what she can hope for in a life that lacks even a hint of warmth. What is there to hope for in a life that denies any warmth? She believes that humans cannot survive without warmth, yet she has managed to survive without it, disregarding any expectations. Today, on her birthday, with the one thing she possesses, she is about to commit her first sin. Raising her hands, she taps into her magical abilities to summon sharp ice knives with grace. She convinces herself that this is the right path, finally feeling warmth. She calls out to God or anyone who may be listening, praying for just one thing. She prays to be born in a place that is not too cold. Reflecting on memories from her childhood where her mother screamed at her. The memory of her mother calling her a useless thing resurfaces in her mind, along with flashes of the past. At this moment, her mother breaks a vase, stating that someone like her should never have been born. She wonders why she has to endure these memories until the very end, as they never let her find peace. Her mother tells her not to pretend to be pitiful every time she sees her, making her feel like she's walking on the fires of hell. She shares the story of her mother, who was once Empress Alicia but became dissatisfied with her status and fell into decadence. Millard succeeded the imperial throne, leaving her mother at loose ends and placing all the blame on the newborn child. As a young girl, she truly believed it was her fault and remained silent, enduring the pain. Lost in her thoughts, she is abruptly brought back to reality by her mother's admonishment, warning her not to entertain any other thoughts, realizing that even someone like her finds her laughable now. Our female lead touches her cheek and contemplates this feeling, as the presence of her ice magic stirs within her, reminding her of its existence. As she examines her hands, a wave of shock washes over her. The realization hits her hard, she's definitely dead. Could it be that she has somehow traveled back to the past, while still retaining her freezing ability? Her deluded mother, always quick to judge, believes that even her own daughter looks down on her. With a smirk, her mother raises her hand, ready to strike. If this is her retribution, it feels excessively cruel. Meanwhile, a young boy passing by suddenly stops in his tracks, captivated by something intriguing. His curiosity compels him to investigate further. In a flashback, a maid presents something to the Empress, informing her that it was sent by the Emperor for Princess Valerie. Surprised by the familiarity, Valerie wonders if Millard has finally lost his mind. Nevertheless, she considers it great news and instructs the maid to place the music box wherever she pleases. She believes it brought her kind words, something she had never heard before. Now, she gazes sadly at the shattered remains of the music box, a poignant reminder of its once cherished melody, now lost forever due to her mother's irreparable damage. Her mother, with the same piercing blue eyes as hers, glares at her angrily, ordering her to stay quietly in her room until her wounds heal. Any attempt to step outside without permission will result in severe consequences. She scoffs, knowing she couldn't even if she wanted to. In the present, she finds herself in the same position, questioning why she endured and why she continues to endure. With a surge of adrenaline, she forcefully shoves her mother, causing her to stumble and fall. A mix of amusement and anger twists her expression as the maids stand in shock, witnessing the scene. She screams at them, demanding that they catch her. The rush of adrenaline courses through her veins as she sprints with all her might, despite the pain in her feet. She wonders where she should go, her mind drifting back to the snowy mountains where the Emperor used to send her supplies. Perhaps he could help her now too. However, her escape is abruptly halted as the two maids swiftly apprehend her. One of the maids grumbles about the inconvenience, impressed by how well she runs even in her current state. The other maid dramatically insists that the princess should maintain her dignity. As she tries to call for help, her words become incoherent and muffled as the maid firmly covers her mouth. With a taunting tone and a haunted look in her eyes, the creepy maid assures her that if she obediently follows them, the former empress will surely forgive her. She ponders her options, realizing that it may be the end if they take her away. Should she freeze them with her ability? Suddenly, she flinches, her eyes widening in alarm as she contemplates the implications of her thoughts. She tells herself that she cannot become a monster, even if she possesses the ability of one. She makes one final plea for help, persisting even with her mouth muffled. However, the maid dismisses her pleas, urging her to just go. Her gaze then falls upon the blonde-haired child she had seen earlier, who watches her with alarm in his eyes. The child's face contorts with confusion and worry as she strains to recognize him. But just as she realizes that she is being taken away, panic sets in. She knows she cannot let it happen. Desperately, she tries to call out to the child for help, silently pleading for him to take a hint and inform her father of the situation. When Valerie is brought back to her mother, she asks once again to confirm that they caught her without being seen by anyone. The maid assures her that they did. The former empress declares that whatever happens in this secluded place never reaches the emperor. She then looks down at her trembling daughter and reminds her that her efforts were in vain. She dares her to show her defiance and run away. Valerie, determined to defy her mother, grabs her head with both hands and says that she should put her back in her place again. However, before she can react, the maids come running and inform Her Highness that the situation is dire. They reveal that the Emperor's knights have arrived outside. Valerie realizes that the child probably told him. She gets angry at the maid, saying that she specifically said no one saw. Frustrated, she instructs the maid to hurry and clean the room. The maid questions what about the princess. Valerie's mother tells her to stay still as if she were dead and reminds her that they still have things to discuss. The knights come running, and Captain Bruno of the Imperial Knights stands in the middle. They greet Alicia and express their hopes for her well-being. Alicia returns their greeting and remarks that it has truly been a while. She then asks them why the Imperial Knights have come all the way here. Bruno explains that His Majesty has ordered them to come and check on Her Highness, the princess. Alicia replies that she doesn't recall them being so close that the Emperor would order visits. Bruno states firmly that he simply came here to follow his orders. Alicia turns her back on him and says that she understands his intentions, but now is not the right time. She instructs him to convey to the Emperor that the princess is currently napping after her etiquette lessons. When Bruno questions whether she plans on disobeying his orders means that she will not comply, her demeanor immediately changes. She confidently confirms that he is right, and questions why they have to wake the princess up just for her to make an appearance in front of him. Bruno apologizes and reminds her that these are the orders, but before he can finish, she screams at him, insisting that she already told him she's asleep. She asks if her words mean nothing to them just because she's the obsolete princess. She refuses to show her child unless the Emperor himself comes. Bruno gives up and apologizes for disturbing her rest. Valerie, on the other hand, thinks that if they just leave like that, she will have to deal with the consequences. She tightly shuts her eyes, refusing to entertain the completion of that thought. To their horror, the Emperor arrives himself and inquires about the commotion, leaving everyone startled and apprehensive. Bruno apologizes and explains the situation to the Emperor. Alicia, who has been observing the scene, speaks up and asks the Emperor why someone as busy as him would come to the palace just to check on her state. She suggests agreeing on a later time and day. The Emperor, with conviction in his voice, firmly states that he is here to see his younger sister and questions whether he needs a reason. His eyes harden as he demands to know where Valerie is. The former empress, feeling nervous, laughs awkwardly and mentions that Valerie will be surprised to hear about his arrival. She then apologizes, saying that they are not close enough to exchange greetings. Alicia, deep in thought, wonders why he would pay no attention to her for the past years, but suddenly show up now. She believes that he must have a reason for insisting on waking up the child and seeing her. The Emperor explains that he received word that the one and only princess of their empire was being dragged away by her mere servants. In that moment, the Queen's mask falters, revealing the surprise and fear etched across her face. She is caught off guard by his awareness. However, in a split second, she regains her composure and smirks, pretending to be clueless. She asks him what he's talking about, claiming that they have no knowledge of such things. The Emperor laughs and reveals that he didn't know that all the palace servants were conspiring together. He then orders his men to search the entire palace. Alicia questions the Emperor, asking if he's overreacting and causing such chaos based on rumors. The Crown Prince, who had witnessed the incident himself, enters the room and confirms that it's not just hearsay. He states that he saw it with his own eyes and reported it. Alicia realizes that out of all the people, it had to be the Crown Prince who witnessed it. The Emperor tells the Crown Prince that he will take charge from there, reminding him that he was told to wait. The Crown Prince insists on being involved since he was the first to witness it. The Emperor scolds him, calling him a brat, and asks if he's still going to be stubborn. He then shifts his attention back to Alicia and warns her that it would be better for her to come forward on her own and confess before the knights find her. He asks again where Valerie is, but Alicia claims she doesn't know. The Emperor loses his composure and becomes angry, questioning how long she's going to keep lying. Alicia defiantly replies that she doesn't know and won't know until the very end. She screams at him, asking why he's doing this to her. Suddenly, Aaron points at the closet and asks them to open it. He believes Valerie is being kept inside. Alicia's eyes widen in surprise as she whispers in disbelief. The Emperor orders Aaron to open the closet, even though Alicia is standing there, clenching her teeth like a fool. When Aaron opens the closet, he finds a relieved Valerie inside. He greets her and assures her that she doesn't have to worry anymore. He has come to save her. He unties her and acknowledges that it must have been painful, but asks her to hold on a little longer. Valerie's gaze then falls upon His Majesty, and she realizes that they have finally met. Without hesitation, she throws herself at his feet and pleads for his help. She promises to do anything he asks of her, begging him to save her. Her mother questions her actions, wondering what on earth she is doing. His Majesty, now looking quite angry, declares that he doesn't even need to ask what this is about. He orders his men to arrest the main perpetrator, Her Highness, the former Empress Alicia, as well as all the housekeepers and servants of Ronin Palace who aided in her abuse. Valerie feels a comforting touch as Aaron holds her hand. His Majesty smiles at her and suggests that they leave the rest to the knights and make their way out of here. Valerie looks at him with wide eyes, but her attention is quickly drawn to her mother, who is screaming and questioning why everyone is making such a fuss as if they haven't already punished her enough. Her mother then asks Valerie if she thinks she can live on while treating her own mother like this. Bruno places his hand over her mother's mouth to silence her. His Majesty remarks that he sees there is nothing she wouldn't dare to say. He stands tall, towering over her, and declares that her true colors have been revealed. Since she wanted it this way, he suggests they weigh the gravity of her words one by one. He orders Bruno to conduct a thorough interrogation of all the previous incidents. He then reaches out to gently caress his sister, acknowledging that she must be in shock. He suggests they hurry and leave, but Valerie flinches and starts shaking. His Majesty notices her reaction and admits his carelessness. He apologizes and places his jacket on her, promising that he won't harm her. He understands that it must be difficult for her to walk in her current state, so he asks for her permission to carry her. When she nods, he lifts her up and carries her. Aaron smiles at them, and His Majesty looks down at Aaron, expressing his desire to applaud him for his bravery. However, he mentions that they will need to have a talk about wandering around recklessly. Aaron promises not to do it again next time. Valerie thinks she got the help she wanted, but this warmth feels so strange. She used to be alone in the cold palace, but now everything is different. Valerie wonders if this is really happening to her or if it's all just a dream. When Aaron calls for Valerie, he looks at her with concern in his eyes. He notices that she is badly injured, but Valerie tries to convince him that she's okay now. She rests her chin on His Majesty's shoulder. She wants to enjoy this warmth a little longer. His Majesty arrives at the palace with both children in his arms. The head butler, Kyle, greets him and asks if he should call the Imperial doctor. His Majesty agrees and leaves Valerie in their care. He asks about the Empress and the Empress Dowager, and the butler informs him that they are waiting in the drawing room. He ordered them to bring the princess there after her treatment. His Majesty then looks at the maid, Rial, and tells her that Valerie is now in her hands. Rial happily accepts the responsibility. Valerie is then handed over to Rial, who introduces herself. Suddenly, Aaron says he wants to go with her. His father tells him to be careful and thinks about how he still can't get used to their relationship. He realizes that even though they may look like two little kids, one is actually the aunt and the other is the nephew. His Majesty informs the butler that the palace will be chaotic for a while. The butler asks if this is related to the former empress, and His Majesty confirms it. He thought the empress hid her daughter out of overprotectiveness, but it was worse than he thought. He instructs the butler to inform the Imperial doctor that he wants a detailed checkup on Valerie's condition when he arrives. Kyle explains that he can see the swelling on her cheek, which is why he believes it is the cause of her discomfort. He assures the Emperor that he will relay his orders to the doctor. As he enters the living room, both the Empress Dowager and the Empress are waiting for him. The Empress, Lila, expresses her concern and asks if something has happened, and with a serious expression, informs them that he needs to discuss something with them. Meanwhile, Valerie looks at herself in the mirror while her maid tends to her wounds. She ponders if she is around 9 years old and reminisces about the music box. She remembers how she used to secretly play it at night when everyone was asleep. She imagined growing up in a happy and harmonious family, finding comfort in those thoughts. Valerie glances at Aaron, who appears terrified while observing her injuries. Feeling embarrassed, she instinctively tries to cover her wounds and lowers her gaze in discomfort. She apologizes to him, but he looks confused and asks if she did something wrong to him. Valerie explains that he saw things he didn't have to see, and she is sure it must have been shocking for him. Aaron seems surprised by her apology and reassures her that she doesn't need to apologize. Instead, he suggests that she should be thanking him. Feeling scared and reluctant, she thanks him for helping her. Unaware of her change in demeanor, Aaron smiles brightly at her and expresses his appreciation. Valerie wonders if this is what it feels like when light gathers and becomes a person. She contemplates if this is how gratitude looks like. Before she can delve further into her thoughts, they are interrupted by a knock on the door. It is the doctor, seeking permission to enter. Aaron tells her to come in, and Dr. Kanna enters the room. She greets His Highness, the Crown Prince, and Her Highness, the Princess Valerie. Valerie believes she is the best among the 3 Imperial doctors. She is amazed that she gets to see her in person, considering that in her past life, she saved the poisoned Empress who was poisoned by Valerie's own mother. Kanna is very particular and only follows the orders of His Majesty, the Emperor. She apologizes to the Crown Prince and asks for his forgiveness. However, he doesn't seem pleased and asks for an explanation. Valerie clarifies that this is necessary for the treatment. The Crown Prince shows concern in his eyes as he looks at Valerie. But when Valerie assures him that she will be fine, he leaves, with the condition that he will be waiting by the door while being escorted by Riley. He gives one final warning to Kanna, sternly instructing her not to harm the princess while tending to her wounds. Kanna can't help but think that a normal child would cry and scream when in pain, but Valerie remains quiet. She wonders if this is how she copes. After finishing with the bandages, the doctor informs Valerie that the treatment is complete. She then asks if she needs to show the scars under her clothes. This shocks Kanna, questions if she needs to report her condition to His Majesty. Kanna asks if she is aware of the command she received. Valerie answers that it was a lucky guess, otherwise she wouldn't have sent Aaron away. She expresses her gratitude that His Majesty is concerned for the princess. Without him, she would still be locked in that place. Valerie convinces herself that she needs to show Kanna her scars after leaving the Roman palace for the sake of her future. She reassures the princess that it's okay, she is ready. Kanna looks at her with worry and uncertainty. With a trembling hand, Valerie starts to unbutton herself, but Kanna stops her. Kanna holds her hands tenderly and requests to assist her. After a moment of hesitation, Valerie agrees and expresses her gratitude. Kanna writes that upon examining the scars incurred at different times, she's come to the conclusion that the princess was subject to constant abuse. Valerie then gazes at Aaron and expresses her gratitude for making the experience painless. The Crown Prince, pleased with this, smiles brightly and emphasizes that the most important thing is that it wasn't painful. He suggests that they proceed to where his father, His Majesty the Emperor, is located. Valerie feels a sense of unease in the atmosphere and wonders why it is so solemn. She speculates that His Majesty may have informed Her Highness the Empress Dowager and Her Highness the Empress, who are both seated nearby. Val wonders if they believe her. At that moment, His Majesty the Emperor calls out to her and acknowledges that they have read the referral note from the real doctor. He acknowledges the difficulty she must have faced and thanks her for her courage, which surprises her. He states that there is no need for further investigation as he was present during the incident. However, concrete evidence is required to strip the former Empress of her title. Her Highness the Empress calls out to Val, assuring her that they have gathered here to hear her story. Val feels a bit overwhelmed by the situation but continues. She asks if it is all right for her to share what happened. After closing her eyes briefly, she opens them with confidence and reveals her bandaged arm. She declares that she will tell them everything, clenching her fist. Val describes the pain, loneliness, and fear she endured, expressing her desire to no longer live in such a manner. His Majesty the Emperor questions why she didn't seek help, appearing frustrated. However, he quickly retracts his remark, acknowledging that it was inappropriate and they should have recognized the signs sooner. She recalls the words that she is a terrible monster and no one will love her or come to help her even if she tells His Majesty the Emperor. Her efforts will be in vain because she is the terrible daughter of his nemesis. She mentioned that her mother always said that to her, and that is the only reason she could not reach out for help. As she told her that she is the daughter of his nemesis, her Empress the Dowager is stunned. His Majesty the Emperor clenches his fist in frustration as he mentions that he could not have imagined that she blamed her wrongdoings on her daughter and threatened her. He continues to mention that he wasn't aware her servants were all in on it, and he did not expect anything when they said that she was. Raising her lovingly, he calls out to Valerie and apologizes to her sincerely for not finding out sooner. Valerie has tears in her eyes before the Crown Prince calls out to her and hugs her tightly. He also cries a lot as he mentions that she really is not a monster and the monsters are the bad people who hurt her. She begins to tremble as she feels emotional. He tells her that she doesn't need to get hurt from now on. Tears begin to fall from her eyes as she hugs him tightly and begins to cry. Her Empress hugs them both and tells Valerie that the Crown Prince is right. She mentions that it must have been so hard to bear this all alone. She tells Valerie that now she can rely on them. Her Empress the Dowager states that they better stop showing her leniency because of her child. His Majesty the Emperor responds that he is also thinking the same thing, and they shall discuss what to do for her punishment. They all glance towards Valerie, who is sleeping with the Crown Prince. After a while, she opens her eyes as she wakes up. The Crown Prince stretches out as he also wakes up and asks her if she slept well. He looks around before she questions if he is aware of where they are. When he informs her that they are currently in his father's chamber, she reacts by noticing his tiredness and touching her own face. She comments on his puffy eyes, causing him to blush and playfully mention that her eyes are puffy too. This exchange leaves her astonished before they both burst into laughter. In that moment, she feels as if she has awakened on a morning after the winter season, with new sprouts blooming on the tree outside the window, signaling the arrival of spring. The maid defends herself, claiming innocence and stating that she was merely following orders. Tears stream down her face as she insists that she can provide a detailed account of the incident. The Emperor, who happens to be present and observing the situation, addresses Alicia and informs her that all her servants are testifying against her, accusing her of abuse. He questions if she has anything to say in her defense. Alicia looks towards him but chooses to remain silent. As a new day begins, the maids engage in conversation, discussing the scandal surrounding Alicia's alleged abuse. The news spreads like wildfire throughout the palace and even beyond its walls. Given Alicia's former status as the Empress, it is inevitable that she becomes the center of attention. The Emperor is troubled by Valerie's indifference towards this situation. He finds her aloofness bothersome. Just then, he is informed that the princess has arrived. The Emperor commands them to bring her in. The Crown Prince is also present, and the Emperor addresses him, remarking on his presence with the princess. He smiles and playfully questions why the Crown Prince always tags along. The Emperor responds that he is welcome to join before calling out to Valerie. He instructs her to listen attentively to the upcoming words he is about to utter. She complies, acknowledging his statement that he intends to sentence Alicia Belov. Valerie's reaction is sudden as she flinches, contemplating whether the ruling will be the same as in her past life. Alicia Belov has been involved in 2 separate poisoning incidents in her previous life. The first was an unsuccessful attempt to poison Karina, the Empress Dowager, which strained her relationship with her royal officials. As a result, she was forced to seclude herself in Ronin Palace during her childhood. The second incident involved poisoning Empress Lila, who remains unconscious. Alicia's second offense was unforgivable, leading to her receiving the death penalty in the Snow Mountain. The severity of her punishment has increased since her last case, as she has now been sentenced to death. Valerie continues to contemplate this as His Majesty, the Emperor, gazes at her and advises her not to blame herself for the former Empress's demise. He reassures her that Alicia's failed assassination attempt on his mother, the Empress Dowager, has consequences, but none of it is her fault. Valerie appears hesitant as she ponders his concern for her. She realizes that he fears she will hold herself responsible for her mother's death. However, she has mentally prepared herself for this outcome since her arrival and does not feel any guilt. She clenches her face before expressing that she is all right. His Majesty is astonished by her response but then smiles, informing her that the execution will take place in a few days. He informs her that she has been stripped of her status and is currently imprisoned. Valerie inquires if she admits to mistreating her, to which His Majesty, the Emperor, responds that she continues to deny it even now. Valerie accepts his response and His Majesty mentions that the former Empress was not the only one exposed. The servants are dragging each other down in hopes of getting a reduced sentence, and all their confessions match her statement, so their punishments will be more severe. She tells him that she will comply with his orders. She bows down as she thanks him for helping her all this, while he commands her to raise her head as he states he has only done what is right. He thinks that she is definitely the same age as Aaron, but she's already grown up so fast. He mentions that reminds him as he calls out to the Crown Prince, mentioning that he addresses Valerie by name now. Aaron blushes. His Majesty the Emperor states that though she's the same age as him, they should strictly address each other as my brother and aunt. Valerie is shocked to hear those words as she cannot believe the sudden request to address by family title. The Crown Prince mentions that he wants them to call each other by their names, though he doesn't seem very happy about it. His Majesty the Emperor states that is not for him to decide and he should at least ask Valerie for permission. He looks at her with a hopeful expression as Valerie is very nervous. He asks her if she wants to call each other by name too, right? He tries to emotionally mention that he does not have anyone who addresses him by his name. She tells him that is because he is the Crown Prince. He then states that besides, she is the only person eligible to call him by his name, so he questions if she really doesn't want to. She tells him that she understands and he can call her by her name. He gets very excited as he questions really? He calls out to His Majesty the Emperor and mentions that he got the permission. So can he call her by her name? His Majesty the Emperor laughs as he states sure he can. The Crown Prince becomes really excited as he gives Valerie a hug, mentioning that he loves it. He tells her that he will be in her care as they both blush. She responds that she too will be in his care. A few days later, the day of execution was drawing near. Valerie and Aaron found themselves together. Valerie couldn't help but think about Alicia, who would soon be taken to the execution site. Just then, the butler approached them with some news. He informed them that the Emperor had issued an order, forbidding them from leaving the palace. They were not allowed to go outside. Both Valerie and Aaron were taken aback by this revelation. Valerie realized that it wouldn't be appropriate to expose a child to such a horrifying sight. Although she knew it was the right decision, she couldn't help but sigh. Aaron noticed her reaction and closed his book. He suggested that they should leave now, but Valerie questioned where they would go. He understood that she wanted to see the person being executed, but since they couldn't go to the execution site, he proposed they sneak out. He asked her to trust him, even though she seemed hesitant at first. Eventually, she grabbed onto his hand, realizing that they could deal with the consequences later. She agreed to trust his lead. As they made their way through the empty hallway, they were interrupted by a knight who called out to them, stating that leaving the palace was not allowed. Both Valerie and Aaron were shocked to see that it was Roman, the Emperor's right-hand man. They wondered why he was there. Aaron revealed that he had expected Roman's presence and asked if there were any matters he should attend to. He then commanded Roman to take them to the palace gate, but Roman apologized, saying that it was not a request he could fulfill. Aaron clarified that it wasn't a request, but rather a command, and reminded Roman that everything comes with a trade-off. With a determined look, Aaron mentioned the incident of the treasured vase being broken half a year ago, hinting at a possible leverage for his favor. He says that it wasn't his mother, but it was actually him. The knight is shocked and filled with anxiety as he wonders how Aaron found out about it. Aaron replies that he happened to overhear him and his mother talking about it. He also mentions that his mother came up with the plan and gave it to his father, as he wouldn't have let it go unnoticed even if it was him, Sir Bruno. He questions if Bruno is trying to hide behind his mother and asks if he's being shameless. Bruno realizes that he has no other choice now and finds them terrifying. He thinks about the Emperor and Aaron and realizes that they are very similar. He ponders that the princess is desperate. He thinks about the Emperor again and realizes that he has no choice. The maids are staring in Bruno's direction. The question was whether the two highs are forbidden from leaving their quarters. The other person states that it's true and wonders if there's a reason why Bruno is bringing them outside. Aaron thanks him and assures him that his secret will remain hidden. Bruno expresses his gratitude and lets them down, mentioning that the criminals will soon be transferred from prison. He notices that they are approaching and they are the second division in charge of the transfer. The Emperor calls out to them, questioning why they are here. He states that he specifically ordered them not to leave the premises. He calls out to Bruno and asks if he has an explanation. Bruno is sweating and extremely anxious. He calls out to the Emperor before someone loudly greets him. Alicia's attention shifts towards the Emperor as she glances to her side and notices Valerie, His Highness the Majestic, standing in front of her. As Valerie tries to hide, Alicia calls out to her and accuses her of being ungrateful. Alicia attempts to run towards Valeria, questioning whether she truly believes she can be loved by them after betraying her own mother. Clearing her throat, Alicia tells Valeria that she should have gotten rid of that monster, implying that Valerie is aware her threats no longer intimidate her. Valerie realizes that Alicia looks miserable and wretched, and she cannot believe that she caused her so much pain. His Majesty the Emperor acknowledges that this is the only reason he did not want them to cross paths. He raises his voice, questioning the actions of the knights and commanding them to remove Valerie from the children's sight. The knights try to take control of Valerie, but she falls down. His Majesty instructs them to drag her away, while Alicia continues to curse Valerie, questioning whether she thinks the Imperial family will continue to protect her. Alicia warns Valerie that the moment she loses her worth, she will be discarded like trash. Even as one of the knights covers Alicia's mouth, the Emperor asks if they do not know how to silence a crazed felon and commands them to leave. He apologizes as his crown prince calls out to Valerie, advising her not to take Alicia's words to heart. Valerie looks at him and assures her mother that she will no longer be hurt by her words, bidding her goodbye. Alicia tries to say something, but she is unable to. Valerie reflects on how she stood there until her mother left the main area and disappeared from her view. As her mother's figure became smaller and smaller, all of Valerie's emotions vanished. And yes, this is the end. His Majesty conveys to an aide that the second division requires additional training. The aide assures him that he will deliver the message to Sir Hort. In response, His Majesty states that Bruno is not exempt from this demand either. Bruno acknowledges his understanding. Valerie, however, expresses her concern about this decision. Aaron reassures her that it is acceptable and mentions that His Majesty tends to be lenient with Bruno. His Majesty then informs the two individuals that they should not worry about others and that he does not want to hear any excuses until their return. They are instructed to prepare themselves and Bruno is tasked with taking them back to the palace to wait for His Majesty. Later, in a luxurious room, Aaron offers Valerie a delicious cookie. As she eats it, she contemplates how recent events feel unreal, except for the fact that she has been reincarnated. She wonders if everything else is just a product of her imagination. Her eyes darken and her hands tremble. Someone then places their hand on hers. She looks to the side and calls out to Aaron. He asks her what is wrong and if she is still upset about what happened earlier. She reassures him that it is not the case and that everything feels surreal to her. She tells him not to worry about it. As he continues to gaze at her, he emphasizes that they are family and that he adores her deeply. She questions the concept of family, to which he responds affirmatively. Aaron explains that this is why she should not be anxious because the words of the other woman will not come true. Valerie ponders if she truly deserves a family and asks if she can truly be a part of his family. He smiles and assures her that they have been family since birth. He asks if she dislikes the idea, to which she responds that she does not and actually likes it. She beams with a bright smile, expressing her fondness for it and thanking him. Suddenly, someone greets them and introduces himself as Kyle. He extends his greetings to the pair and hopes they had a restful time. The man then mentions that he would like to have a word with Bruno. Bruno promptly assures him that he will be there shortly. As some indiscernible words are exchanged, the two children curiously wonder what is being discussed. Valerie observes that it must be of great importance. The two men then return to the room, and Bruno calls out to the kids. He informs them that the execution has concluded and that His Majesty will be returning to the palace very soon. Valerie notices that there seems to be something else Bruno wishes to convey. Speaking up, she expresses her relief that everything went smoothly and begins to say something else. She apologizes for causing trouble to Sir Roman. In response, the man kneels and kindly tells her that she can call him by name and that there is no need to apologize. He assures her that it was a fair exchange and emphasizes the importance of keeping the secret, as promised. She grins and informs him that she will keep quiet, expressing gratitude towards Sir Bruno. He then inquires about their plans once His Majesty returns, mentioning his intention to repent by running laps with a sandbag. He also questions what the children will do. This elicits blank stares from Aaron and Valerie. Aaron instructs Valerie to stay, insisting that he will face the scolding alone. However, Valerie refuses, acknowledging the help they received from Bruno and Aaron. Aaron attempts to object, but Valerie remains firm. This causes Aaron to feel uneasy, agreeing to stay put while Valerie follows his instructions. The two then have a private conversation, during which Valerie questions the seriousness of the situation. Aaron reassures her that only she can handle it, explaining that this approach will prevent His Majesty from yelling at her. Valerie expresses doubt, but Aaron advises her not to worry. Just then, they are summoned, prompting them to wonder at the speed of the summons. As His Majesty arrives, he crosses his arms while the pair exclaim their innocence. He challenges them to see what excuses they have prepared, causing Valerie to wear a pleading expression on her face. Valerie looks down, explaining that she needed to witness her downfall herself in order to find closure and escape from the abuse. Aaron gives her a thumbs up, signaling that now is the time. With a cute expression, Valerie asks if she will be scolded. Surprisingly, her body tenses as she reflexively stands up, wondering if their plan had succeeded. With a cold, intense gaze, the Emperor stares down at her, making her believe their plan had failed. To her surprise, he sighs and exclaims no. Valerie and Aaron are overjoyed. The Emperor extends his hand towards her, stating that he won't scold her, but she will be punished instead. Her eyes dull, she flinches as he places his hand on her head. Her expression is like that of a crying bear cub, so cute. From now on, he will pat her head without warning, hoping she will get used to it. This is her punishment. With a pleasant smile, he asks if she hates it and assures her he won't force it on her if she does. Valerie confirms that she likes it. The Emperor informs the children they may return to their rooms. They cheerfully reply yes, but he notices Bruno trying to escape. The Emperor clarifies that only the children can leave, as there are still matters to discuss. When did Bruno become so shameless? Bruno may act cool in front of Valerie, but the truth is, he's far from it. As the captain of the Imperial Knights, he is worn out and tired, which is why he doesn't want to run laps around the gymnasium. Bruno tries to make a cute face, but the Emperor tells him he was in such shock that he almost had a heart attack. He was very close to being convicted of regicide. With teary eyes, Bruno asks why it doesn't work with him. The Emperor questions if someone with a physique like his has no conscience. With fire in his eyes, the Emperor orders Bruno to strap a sandbag and run around the gymnasium. It didn't take long for the public to find out about Alicia's execution. It was inevitable that this would happen, as news of the incident had spread throughout the entire palace. Before Alicia could be taken to the guillotine, she met her end when a stone thrown by the enraged crowd struck her. Alicia's fate remained unchanged from her past life, but the incident that caused the people to become frenzied was the belated news of the attempted poisoning of the Empress Dowager, Karina Belov. Despite her husband Kailas's tyrannical rule as the former emperor, Karina continued to care for the people of her country. The people, who could not forget her kindness, took it upon themselves to punish the sinner in Karina's place. On the contrary, Valerie's circumstances were quite different. Her abuse was exposed before Alexia could poison Lila. Unlike before, where the people wished for Valerie's demise, this time they showed compassion. However, Valerie knows that once her powers are revealed, it will all come to an end. This is inevitable, as the people still harbor an underlying fear towards glaciokinesis. Nevertheless, Valerie notices that all the items in her room could be replaced by the furniture in Ronin Palace. This makes her wonder how much they truly care about her. She ponders if she has grown accustomed to having a family and if she can live happily with them. She feels guilty about hiding her powers, but is grateful for the music box and the support and aid provided to her. Although she doesn't understand why the Emperor does this, she was able to survive the freezing cold because of him. Therefore, she decides to confide in him about her powers. Regardless of the outcome, she will accept it. During dinner, she contemplates how she can prove the usefulness of her powers, hoping that they will see the advantages. Unfortunately, she doesn't know how, as she has been confined indoors her whole life and has never received a formal education. Aaron notices her gloomy expression and questions what is wrong. She tells him she is fine, but is grateful that he is always quick to pick up on her worries. Later on, Aaron departs from Valerie to attend his classes. She motivates herself to regain control. While strolling with the maid, Valerie contemplates her next move. Suddenly, she overhears the maid discussing the upcoming warm season of spring. With the weather getting warmer, they long for shaved ice, wishing they could indulge in it all summer. However, due to financial constraints, the maids cannot afford it. Even during winter, they would eat it 7 times. The red-headed maid suggests recreating something similar since they are in the palace. Valerie halts in her tracks, prompting the maid to inquire about the reason. Valerie exclaims that she has figured it out. Later, Valerie informs the maid that she wishes to bathe herself. The maids are taken aback, discussing the potential consequences of allowing it, as they could be punished. Valerie ponders how to explain that she wants to enhance her control over her magic. Her personal maid reassures her that they will find a solution if there is a problem. Valerie reveals that now that she has grown up, she desires to do certain things independently. Touched by her words, the maids decide to grant her request. Valerie is surprised by how easily everyone seems to believe her simple excuses. The maids wait outside as she begins her bath, closing the door to ensure privacy. The atmosphere shifts, and a serious expression crosses her face as a blue aura emanates from her hand. Suddenly, she conjures a blue ore, which transforms into a giant ice spear. Valerie's level remained unchanged, just as she had expected. She couldn't fathom why her powers remained the same even after regression. Believing it was best to reveal her abilities herself before someone stumbled upon them by chance, Valerie acknowledged that she couldn't control her powers with utmost delicacy, possibly because she was still a child. However, she knew she had to gain better control before speaking to His Majesty. Any hint of hesitation would label her as dangerous, but she was relieved that she still remembered how to use her powers. Exiting the bathroom after pouring hot water on herself, Valerie was dried off by the maids. They inquired about how she felt while washing herself, to which Valerie exclaimed that it wasn't bad. 10 days later, Valerie was still washing herself, and the maids grew concerned. They exchanged glances and smiles, expressing their determination to prepare everything. They believed Valerie was uncomfortable revealing her scars to others. The head maid reassured them that Valerie simply needed time, so they shouldn't rush and should wait patiently. Valerie created 3 ice spears and then crushed them into water. She stared at her body and believed she was ready. Unfortunately, if everything went wrong, she would have to use her powers to escape. However, she vowed to never return to the snowy mountains. At the king's palace, the escorts of the 1st Cavalry guarded the area. Bruno spotted Valerie, who smiled and called out to him. He asked if she had come to see His Majesty, to which Valerie replied affirmatively, stating that she had something to tell him. Her gaze then fell upon a knight with orange hair, who smiled radiantly at her. Valerie was startled, wondering why he was smiling at her like that. Valerie mentioned to Bruno that if His Majesty was busy, she could come back later. Bruno informed her that the king was just doing some paperwork. He ordered Rex to inform the Emperor of Valerie's arrival. Rex had noticed that Valerie was scared of his beautiful smile. With the Emperor's permission, Valerie knocked on the door and entered. She noticed the stacks of paper and offered to come back later if he was busy. The king assured her that he could finish quickly, so she shouldn't worry. They both took a seat. The Emperor was informed that she had something important to discuss, so he asked her what it was. She knelt down, preparing to make her request. He asked her what was wrong and what she wanted. She requested to stay in the Imperial Palace under his protection. He assured her that if that was all she desired, she didn't need to worry, as it was only natural for her to stay as a member of the family and he would protect her. She confessed that she had been hiding something and that when he heard it, he might change his mind. Valerie, with a trembling voice, exclaimed that she had the power of freezing. The emperor understood why his words failed to calm her down. He asked if Alexia also knew about her power, to which she replied no, not even her mother knew. She knew it was a shameless request, but she begged him to help her one more time. Catching her off guard, he exclaimed that of course he would help her. He noticed the disbelief on her face, but he knew it was a risk he was willing to take. He also knew that she was not the kind of person to use her power to hurt someone. If she had the will to do it, she would have done it a long time ago, especially on Alexia. But instead, it was Valerie who was full of scars. There was no way he could forget something like that. He knelt down and expressed his desire for her to validate his decision. Above all, he yearned for her willingness to do so. With tears welling up in her eyes, she gazed at the emperor and burst into tears. Despite the evident riskiness of his choice, he resolved to place his trust in her. She offered her apologies and recalled Aaron's advice to express gratitude instead of apologies in such situations. Rising to her feet, she thanked him for his trust, and he reciprocated by thanking her for her bravery. The emperor then inquired about the extent of her control over her powers, and she disclosed that she had complete mastery, having practiced extensively. However, she suggested that it would be more efficient to demonstrate in person rather than explain, but she would require a location with water. The emperor proposed the nearby bathroom, and once inside, Valerie summoned ice spears. The emperor observed her magic intently as she created an ice circle, ice cubes, and even an ice sculpture of Aaron. Valerie demonstrated her adeptness with her powers, but the emperor cautioned that no secret can remain eternal. Therefore, it would be wise to utilize her powers for the benefit of others. Valerie proposed using her powers to create and sell ice, which could aid those in need. The kingdom faced challenges in the ice industry due to a lack of technology to prevent melting, but with Valerie's assistance, the situation could improve. If her freezing abilities were employed effectively, losses would be minimal, and an increase in the availability of ice would enhance people's daily lives. Even if her powers were discovered, few would dare to complain. Valerie assured the emperor that she would give him the remaining profits. He chuckled, informing her that she need not repay him, as she was still at an age where she should only receive. Furthermore, as the wealthiest man in the empire, he would retain all the profits. However, if she desired, she could donate the funds, as the good deeds she performed from that point forward would serve as her future protection. Valerie then prepared to depart, but accidentally dropped a bracelet. The emperor retrieves the item and contemplates why she doesn't wear it on her wrist. He chuckles, realizing that she must have intended to escape. He laughs, remarking that everything in her room belongs to her, yet she chose the simplest thing to take with her. Her face turns red, and the emperor apologizes, assuring her that he will stop laughing. He advises her to calm down, as Aaron must be searching for her. Initially, the emperor assumes he is being scolded, but he soon realizes that she is simply concerned. She bows and expresses her gratitude. Valerie departs, and the emperor contemplates how he now has someone to assist Valerie with her business.